Well, this morning we have joining us Jane Bevan, who is the Chief of WASH, that is the Water, Sanitation and Hygiene at UNICEF. Thank you so much for joining us, Jane.
Pleasure to be with you.
So this is the situation that we have on our hands, and every year, I don't know when we started marking the World Environmental Day, but I'm sure that it's not something we've been doing. I'm sure it's something we've done for over a decade now.
Yes.
So one has to ask, how has awareness about environmental issues contributed to raising awareness to avoiding situations like this?
Well, thanks for the question. World Environment Day has been a long-standing event, if you like, on the international calendar, and it does help to really bring thoughts and awareness around environmental issues to the fore. And I think now, more than ever, with the impacts that we're seeing of climate change, it's a really important issue that we cannot ignore in this country. Nigeria has been seen, and particularly the children of Nigeria are the most impacted, one of the top 10 countries in the world most affected by climate change impacts. So yeah, there's
one
a
of
lot
the
of
top
problems.
10, you said?
Yes, one of the top 10 countries. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sure that you're looking at the visuals. You've seen the pictures of the devastation that has hit Mokwa. What exactly is running through your mind as head of WASH at UNICEF?
Well, obviously, my heart goes out to all the families affected, and I know that UNICEF team was on the ground as soon as they possibly could be mobilized from our Kaduna office. I saw my colleague Teresa there on the ground, helping with water treatment, helping with toilets and sanitation. These are some of the key issues that we need to put in place. Water treatment and safe sanitation to make sure that what's already a disaster doesn't turn into an epidemic. In situations like these, when water is unsafe, disease can easily spread, and we don't need a cholera outbreak on top of all of this. So I think for me that is the first impact, is to make sure that we have no further deaths as a result of this disaster. I mean, what springs to mind is that we have floods every year. This is not a new thing, but what is new is the intensity. Sometimes I think, and this has been predicted by all of the climate change models, that all of the extremes will be more extreme. So we'll have hotter summers, we'll have wetter rainy seasons, and we'll have bigger floods. So this is kind of the new normal, and we need to be adapting to this and really building communities to be more resilient to make sure that the impacts are minimized.
And that's going to be it's going to be a tough job. I mean, a really, really tough job, because we understand that, given the warnings now that the National Emergency Management Agency has now issued, saying that over 1,000 communities in 30 states will be impacted by floods in this rainy season. And the resistance that oftentimes state governments get when they're telling people to move to higher ground, especially those who've built on floodplains or who are in the path of water, maybe even the memory path of water. It is a tough job ahead of all of us. But do you think that, situations like this could reinforce it, could perhaps get people to understand the seriousness of the devastation that we're speaking of?
Yes, I think it is a wake-up call. Unless we want to see more situations like this, I would really encourage states, particularly riverine states, those that are on the borders of these large rivers that will flood, it's not a question of if, to ensure that people are not living in those floodplains, because that is where we're going to have the problems. So yes, I would really encourage people to take it seriously.
It's interesting. I find it very interesting. You are the chief of WASH, and I know that before now, WASH has been always about sanitation, about hygiene, and it doesn't seem like, yes, we've paid some lip service to it. We would say we've had conferences on it. Sometimes you see a little action, but it doesn't seem that there is concerted effort to make sure that water is available in public places, for instance, schools, etc. For instance, these people were initially camped at a school, and you would imagine that, assuming that school had water, they would have no problems you know, settling there. Part of the complaints we heard from, you know, those who had been displaced, who were seeking relief and camped at a school, was that there was no portable water that they could use in the school. And so one has to ask sometimes, do you ever get tired of speaking about the importance of having things as basic as water in communities, in public places, such as schools, markets, hospitals, primary healthcare areas? Do you ever get tired of it?
That's my job, so I can't say I get tired of it, but I do sometimes get a little tired of the lack of response, but I will keep battering away and emphasizing the importance of safe water and of sanitation for basic public health. And it's the simplest, most effective primary healthcare intervention you can make is to wash your hands, for example. If you don't have access to water to even wash your hands, then you know there are knock-on effects going to a primary healthcare facility, for example. You're going to get sicker, not better, if people are passing on diseases because they haven't simply washed their hands. So there are some things that, no, I can't get tired of saying them because they're so fundamentally important to our everyday life.
Are there areas where you say we're making progress?
There definitely are. Sanitation, the Clean Nigeria campaign, we're definitely improving. We now have about 20% of all of the LGAs that are open defecation free. I think it's 20%, the whole of Jigawa State, almost the whole of Katsina State.
The whole of Jigawa State is free of open defecation.
Yes.
That is something to celebrate.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. It's been like that for a couple of years now. And I believe there's several states that are not far behind. So Kaduna is very close. Like I said, Katsina is very close. Bauchi is not too far behind.
How do you measure that? Because I know that it's even something that afflicts even the Federal Capital Territory. So, being the Federal Capital Territory.
It's a huge piece of work, and you have to go household by household, community by community, and LGA by LGA. So we work on a LGA-wide process with the Clean Nigeria campaign, really to make sure, and then they get certified and verified as open defecation free once they're convinced that every household has a toilet.
And, well, I was going to say they have a toilet and they also wash their hands.
Using it and they're washing their hands, yes, absolutely.
Okay. But how come is it that, you know, even cities like the Federal Capital Territory aren't yet open defecation free?
So in FCT, I'd say it's a special case, and similarly to other large cities like Lagos, most households do have toilets, but the issue is public places. So if you're out and about, there are very few public toilets where you can actually go and relieve yourself. So often people have no option but to, you know, stop the car and go on the side of the road because there is no alternative. So what we need to see is more public toilets, and there's businesses to be, you know, and money to be made in these, in places like motor parks, like any gathering places, markets, where people get together and there is no facility. There's going to be open defecation, and then you start to get the spread of disease. So it's really important to focus, and we're working very closely with the FCT and the FCDA to develop more public toilets in Abuja specifically.
Well, I heard the Vice President say that, you know, 2 billion naira has now been approved by the President, you know, to rebuild homes and get people back on their feet, even though we have to be sure that they're not building the homes back in floodplains. But what are some of the things that you would also be asking the federal government to pay attention to?
Yeah, I think long term, it's about planning, and town planning specifically, to make sure that there's enough safe land that isn't going to flood where people can build their houses. Because my guess is they went in the floodplain because there was nowhere else to go. So looking at town planning long term, but I think also emergency preparedness planning, because I would say, you know, floods are not a surprise. We get them every year. And so if we had more of a preparedness plan, we knew exactly what to do, and people were in place to do this, do that, and all of the steps were ready, and all of the materials were ready, so chlorine, for example, and the other materials needed, then we would respond much more quickly and much more effectively.
Well, I understand my colleague Ayo has questions for you. Open out to you, Ayo.
Well, thank you, Mokwa. Madam, thank you for all of the enlightenment, but I just have one or two questions. First one is, I mean, this day, the World Environment Day, has been celebrated since 1973. And yet we still have struggles with environmental issues. It's the level of enlightenment or awareness that I would like you to speak to. We celebrate this every year, but it would seem like every year things tend to get a little worse until certain calamities such as the one that we have on our hands comes up. And this is not just a Nigeria thing, it's something that happens all over the world from what we know. Whether or no weather, we knew that the environment was always important, yet it would seem like we don't take the kind of, we're not as aware or as enlightened about the environmental issues that will arise if certain things are not done. What's your understanding of the level of awareness of the average human, and more specifically the average Nigerian, about environmental issues?
Well, thanks for the question. I agree, it does sound a little frustrating, but to be honest, people are often aware of what immediately affects them. And so particularly if you're an urban dweller, for example, you may not be so aware of the impacts that we're having in the broader country on the environment. So I think UNICEF's been working with the Ministry of Environment particularly, but also the National Council on Climate Change, to be really doing a lot with young people to raise awareness around these issues. And today I know all over the country there's going to be loads of different events marking World Environment Day and planting trees. And I even understand in Enugu there's going to be an effort to break the Guinness World Record for the most trees planted. And I believe young people and the new generation, which is so exciting because we're such a youthful country here in Nigeria. And so it's fantastic to have more people being aware of the climate change issues and how they can help to mitigate some of the problems.
Well, still talking about the awareness, level of awareness or lack of it. Speak to the theme of the year. In Lagos, in Lagos State, there is that war, so to speak, against the use of single-use plastics in the city. And now, this year, the theme of this whole conversation about the World Environment Day is putting an end to plastic pollution. Maybe there is a need for us to understand the severity of the problem. Help us understand it so that maybe some other state governments all over the nation might be able to see how severe this is and probably also recommendations of what to do and options to take.
Thank you so much for the question. You're absolutely right. The theme is about plastic pollution, and it is a huge problem all over the world, not just in Nigeria. And different countries have taken different steps to reduce plastic pollution. And of course, banning single-use plastics, particularly, for example, shopping plastic bags, but also plastic cutlery, drinking straws, all of these things that we use once and then throw away, is not helping. And my understanding from the Minister of Environment himself is that Nigeria has actually banned single-use plastic, but that not many states have taken up the law, as it were, except for Lagos, which is really showing the way. So thank you, Lagos, for that. I think other states, I would really urge you to do more to consider banning plastic bags, or at least charging for them, so that people think twice about taking a plastic bag if it's not absolutely necessary, and bringing their own reusable bag from home whenever they go shopping.
Well, one of the reasons that Lagos has adduced to banning the single-use plastics is that it is reason or cause for flooding in a good number of cases. And that, of course, has been a perennial problem in different parts of the country.
Yes.
Now, back to the Mokwa conversation that you and Mokwa started with, as you said, and as Mokwa has also corroborated, it's an annual thing. We know that there's going to be torrential flooding. We've heard this since the last quarter of last year, and it's been repeated about a month or two ago. What needs to be done now? What difficult decisions need to be taken? What proactive measures would you recommend, particularly as the coming days gush out more rainfall?
Yes, well, as I mentioned before, I think it's really about preparedness and being ready, knowing in the past where the floods have been, and there are maps from agencies like NIMET that show us where we can expect floods this year. They have a whole forecast, and looking at these forecasts and getting all of the emergency response in place, like I mentioned before. So making sure we have supplies, like chlorine for treating the water, for example, and all of the other measures that need to be in place to make sure that people can respond quickly and efficiently. Yes, there is likely to be flooding, but we can minimize the impact if we prepare. And so I would really urge all people living in riverine areas where they expect flooding to think about raising things off the ground, particularly, and moving out if you are in a floodplain, for example.
You know, part of what we've also heard, and I think the papers had it this morning, for those who are intervening in the situation in Mokwa, is that it's a bit overwhelming for those who have decided to go and help. You've heard that report as well?
Yeah.
So how confident are you? I know that your people are already on the ground. I mean, you've mentioned seeing your colleague there. We've seen very boldly UNICEF colors, and we have to thank UNICEF for the work that they're doing on the ground there. But how confident are you that, you know, that community will not suffer any epidemics, no breakouts of any diseases, given, well, I said, the interventions that have now, you know, been done in those areas?
Well, I think the fact that we have response on the ground, and I would like to emphasize that UNICEF was on that clip, but there are other agencies there as well responding, not least the State Emergency Management Agency, which I think is responding very well. But I would say that it all kind of depends on how quickly we're able to get people into more permanent housing conditions, and with safe water and decent toilets, so that diseases don't spread. But there's every reason to be confident that with that support on the ground, that should not happen. But we have to be also aware that there could be more floods coming.
Indeed. I mean, the rains are not over now.
Exactly.
But, you know, is that what some of the aid agencies on the ground there will be pushing for? How quickly to resettle those who are currently in the camps, or do they think that this should be held up until you know, the rains are over?
No. I think you have to act immediately and rehouse people, even if temporarily, away from the area, so that the area can be cleaned up and that people can access safe water.
What would you be urging state governments, you know, generally about WASH? I mean, you've said Jigawa, and I think we need to put that up, that
Yes.
Jigawa is now open defecation free. And I mean, if they've done the work, they certainly deserve the praise. What would you be telling other state governments right now to be doing with regards to sanitation? And this notice that NEMA has now given that about 30 states will be affected by floods this year.
Yes. So sanitation is like I said, one of our primary defense barriers against disease. And it's so important, and it becomes more important at times like these when we have very heavy rainfall. So I would really urge all states to prioritize the coverage of sanitation. I know there is huge commitment in some states like Enugu, in Benue, for example, really strong commitment, and work is being done. But there are other states that really have not shown much interest in improving
And
sanitation.
you're not ready to mention their names now,
No,
are you?
I'm not, but you know who you are.
Okay, well, I hope they know themselves and, are doing something in that regard, because we certainly know how this also affects death rates when we now begin to talk about cholera outbreaks, which now seems very embarrassingly, or would I say shamefully, a yearly occurrence as well. But we certainly will keep tabs with what is happening in the area of water and sanitation and also hygiene. But we have to thank you very much for coming on the program this morning. Jane Bevan is the Chief of WASH, that is Water, Sanitation and Hygiene at UNICEF.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.